Sorry, y'all. Sorry, I was trying to share something with you guys, but it's not, it's not showing up. Let's do this again. Let me do this again. Trying to share something. How's everybody doing? Peace and blessing. Moboika. Sorry, y'all. What hub? Sorry, I was trying to share something with you guys. It's not sharing. Let's see how I can do this. Just give me a few, and I'll see what I can do from here. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Yep. I don't know. Yeah. I have a presentation for everyone. Just give me a second to set up. I was kind of started out with some music, some drumming. Let's see if I can find it, and then I can share it. Let's see. My videos. Let me see something. And let me see what I can do. Live. No, nothing there. Nothing there. Okay, I'm trying to look for this clip that I put down, but it's not here. Let me look in the broadcast. Stuff that on my broadcast video. Let's look under that. And it's such a shame because I really wanted to play it. I wanted to play it, but it seems like, let me see if I can grab it and play for you guys. So far, I don't see it. Sorry, y'all. I need to be a little more prepared when it comes to that. Anyway, peace and blessings to everybody. Let me just play you this here real quickly before I start, okay? Yes, so what hub, okay? Maboika, bienvenido, and welcome everybody. So class is in session, you know what I'm saying? Just wanted to give you a prerequisite. Like I said, I'm just scratching the surface, just a little bit, getting in there, you know what I'm saying? And then again, we'll come up with more and more information, more in depth of it. But to be honest with you, I think I'm going to do that on a Patreon. Yeah, Patreon. I think I'm going to do that, you know what I'm saying? Because it's a lot of work. You know what I'm saying? You got to be ready. So, let's go on to it. Let me see. Fix this up. Okay. It's the way you got to wear this. You got to wear this properly. I already screwed it up. Yep, I already screwed it up. Who's messing with me out there? Who's messing with me? You hating? Don't hate, man. Let's all be one with each other. So let me bring something up for you. And my screen, here it is. You should be seeing this. Right? Or you probably not seeing it because I have to do this. Okay? All right, so we're there, here, and okay. So this is the first thing we're going to do. Let me enlarge it. I'm going to read to you. I should have presented something else, but yeah, before we do this, excuse me, folks. Yeah, let me save the good for last. Let's do this. Let's do this instead. Let me stop sharing my screen there. Share here. Share the screen. Share there. And let's look at the tab. Let's look at, in Ghana, what they call the door to no return. Okay? We want to share that. Okay? There it is. We're going to share this. Here you go. Okay? Now, this is from the CNN World. Inside Ghana's Elmina Castle is a haunting reminder of his grim past. Okay? So I just wanted to start off with this. This is the so-called castle up there in Ghana. This is the door of no return. This is where a lot of the slaves, our ancestors who were brought over as slaves, this is where the point that they came through. This had churches in there, and when they brought the slaves there, anyway, let's read on. Let's see what it says here. It's in Lagos, Nigeria. Now, they're from CNN. Across Africa, from the north of the Sahara to the West African coast, sits many relics of the continent's early interaction with Europe. Okay? In Ghana, two of the country's most famous spectacles is the Elmina Castle and the Cape Coast Castle, which are truly imposing. But their ancient walls were once home to one of the most tragic and brutal periods in the history of humanity, the transatlantic slave trade. The bigger of the two, the Elmina Castle, is a whitewashed fortress of the coast of the small town of Elmina in what is now modern-day Ghana. First built in 1482 as a Portuguese trading settlement, and 91,000 square foot of behemoth was one of the principal slave depots in the transatlantic slave trade for more than 3 centuries. Today, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that attracts tens of thousands of visitors every year. You know, some of them, like Ivor Bartels, are looking to reconnect with their lost family's heritage, and unwittingly, a lot more. My mother is Belizean, and I was born in the UK. I'm Afro-Caribbean, British Caribbean. My name took me to Ghana because I knew there was a Bartels here, he said in the halls of the old castle. I thought this was an ideal place for me to start my journey, to search for my roots, for my past, to find out really what happened here within these walls. There's a dark history. Alex Afule, a tour guide for the castle, said there are 2 schools of thoughts on the inspiration behind the castle's name. One believed that the word Elmina is an Arabic name which means harbor. One also has it that in Portuguese word meaning the mind, la mina, right? Elmina, the mind. When the Portuguese first arrived, their main commodity was gold. Alfonso explained. At the rate they were getting it, this made the Portuguese to think and believe that a gold mine is found here, he says. However, when the Europeans' power began to invade Africa for slaves, Elmina became an essential stop for the slave route and a prison of sorts for captives. Today, Aful retraces a brutal journey that most captives face before being sold into slavery. It often begins by determining which prisoners were healthy enough for the long, arduous course ahead. Normally, they want the healthy captive. So first they had to count. They had an instrument that they would use to open the teeth, to count the number of teeth that they had. In some cases, they had to be whipped and done to jump for them to see how strong they were, so that the first phrase, now when they get in here, day after that has been done, they were then put in a various dungeons. This is all happening in this castle. After being tested, the captives were confined to Elmina's dungeon, where conditioning was shocking, even by the standards of time. There was no toilets, there was no bathrooms. In some cases, they had straws on the floor, which they used a mattress, and so on. They had straws on the floor, which they used as mattress. In all these dungeons, they were given buckets, which they were expected for them to use themselves. But because of these conditions they were in, the chains they had on their feet made it almost impossible for them to get to this bucket. Now, captives could spend as 3 months in the confinement awaiting their journey into the dark and unknown future. As Ofo explained, Aful explained, negotiations were concluded before slave ships would carry the human cargo. But in a market where the seller had little controls over how each slave could be distinguished, the buyers often felt the need to label their new property in the most inhumane ways. Now, with the branding, each merchant had his own method of doing it. Some would use alphabet, some would use numbers on the form of a metallic stamp. They put it on fire. Already they had some oil on their body and prepared them for the journey, so they burnt them on the skin. Branded and subjugated, the captives were led aboard a waiting ship through the door of no return. Horrendous, man. I can't even read all this stuff. When the ship came, they took them in batches through the doors of no return. And they get to the ship for the journey to proceed. From there, they got to the ship. The door of no return still swings. Centuries after, a menacing reminder of the captives' descent into the life of the terror and relentless servitude. Initially, this door was bigger, but when the slave trade began, it was reduced this way so that one person can come in at a time. The door of the dungeons where captives were restrained and the walls through which the slaves walked all serve as cues of story that Africa seemed to have confined to the past. Ah, man. So it goes on and on and on. So as you go on and you read on and on and on, you get the idea that this was slaves were brought over to the Americas, and we're just going to segue into a report, genetic data, and historical reports that are out there. But this just gives you an idea that this did happen. Okay, now we're going to look at of how it's impacted us in this day and time. You know what I'm saying? We spoke about the Mali Empire. Excuse me, let me get on screen. We did speak about the Mali Empire and how the Mali Empire were here 200 years before Christopher Columbus. And from this time on, we're looking at a good 600 years, right? Because this all started in the 1600s, right? And becoming the Mali Empire were here in America since the 12th century or 1300s. So we're looking at a good span of what? Of a good 600 years. You know what I'm saying? So this is the thing. Let's look at, let me share the screen here. Pardon me a second, let me bring up this thing. I don't want to do that yet, so let's just do this here right now. Let me bring the screen up. And here it goes. So, here we go. And let me maximize that. And I want to make sure that you're getting this. This is very important. Okay, this is genetic consequences of the transatlantic slave trade in America. Okay, these were studies that they made with 23andMe research team. Just give me a second. Let me pull this up. Make sure I'm still on. Yep, still on. Okay. Okay, yeah. 1, 2. Okay. All right, you hear me and everything. Okay. Let's read the introduction. Now, this is a study. This was a study. So this is a study that was a report that came out. It's an article, right? Scientific article that came out, right? And so let's read the introductions. The forced displacement of more than, now I want you to pay attention to the numbers, and I want you to pay attention to the numbers, okay? We're gonna go dig deep into that. Maybe not in this city. I'm not gonna stay here too long. I got a meeting I got to attend to. So the forced displacement of more than 12.5 million men, women, and children from Africa to the Americas between 1515 and 1865. That's a long time. A long time. Has had a significant social, cultural, health, and genetic impacts across the America. And it's not even mentioning the Mali Empire with 2,000 ships that got here. There's not even no mention of that. Just mentioning this slave trade that was going on since 1515 and 1865. There was different pockets, right? And you'll see later. So the consequences of this displacement are myriad and complex, reflecting the very economical goals and practices of the nations outfitting the ships that transported captive Africans. Excuse me. The current narrative of this era of forced deportation has been compiled from thousands of historical shipping documents, as well as diaries, personal letters, sketches, and records of slave sales. So this is the study. Peace, everybody watching. So this is the study, right, that has been going on, right? Now these data suggest that the number of enslaved people disembarking at each port in the Americas, the nation that shipped enslaved people to a given port, and the population and geographic location in Africa from which captives were taken differs. It differs from region to region within the Americas. For example, shipping manifests indicate that the number of enslaved people disembarking at Brazilian and Caribbean ports was far greater than the number disembarking at other ports in the America. Brazil and Caribbean. An estimated 10.1 billion enslaved people, primarily male, disembarked in Central America, South America, and the Caribbean, accounting for more than 90% of captives who were brought to the Americas. Now, I'm not saying this is all factual. I'm just thinking, looking at the wording, because, and then you have to put the pieces together. We already have documents of the Mali Empire and all the many ships, and there are people that still hold records of the Idris dynasty, Bambara tribe. You know, there's still people that have those records. You know what I'm saying? We have that. Then you have the deportation of slaves coming from this area, and we're going to discuss what area they came from. So, okay, I look at it. You know, it was told to me when I read this, set the record straight. This concept called tying into the vine, because if you have people, you have tribes and people here that have African ancestry, are learned men, are creating civilization, political system, and everything all throughout the Caribbean, Brazil, the Caribbean, and the North America, all throughout, right? When you bring in slaves, right, and then you tie into the vine, because a lot of those free black men in North America and the Caribbean and Central America were enslaved. They were kidnapped also within. That's the movie when you see the 12-year slave, 12 years a slave. He was a free man from what? New Jersey, from up north. And he got kidnapped. He was a violinist and he got kidnapped, right? And spent, what, 12 years in the South as a slave. But he was free. And also in the movie Roots, you also see that a man in his cart, and they asked him for his paper, and he showed his paper, and he was a black man traveling with papers saying that he was a free man. You can touch it. But then a lot of times they got kidnapped too. You know what I'm saying? Dignitaries got kidnapped and put in dungeons and taken to areas so they can tie into the vine and enslave. It happened here in the United States with the whole birth certificate and emancipation, Declaration of Emancipation, right? Abraham Lincoln so-called freed the slaves, but he didn't free. All he did was transfer the commodity over to the Union. You know what I'm saying? So that's another discussion. But anyway, we all became enslaved again. And they tie into the vine, all right? So you really got to look at this data. These data suggest that a number of enslaved people disembarking at each port in Americas, the nation that shipped enslaved people to a given port, and the population and geographic location in Africa from which captives were taken differs from region to region within the Americas. For example, again, the shipping manifests indicate that the number of enslaved people disembarking at Brazilian and Caribbean ports were far greater than the number disembarking in other ports in America. An estimated 10.1 million enslaved people, primarily male. Remember, it was the male slaves that were able to make that voyage and that journey. It was hard for children and women to make that journey. Women are more emotional. You know what I'm saying? They needed the male. Why? And then who did those male tie into the vine when they got here? Now, so as we go on, primarily male disembarking in Central America, South America, and the Caribbean, accounting for more than 90% of all captives who were brought to the Americas. 90%, with fewer than 500,000 disembarking in the mainland in North America. 3 to 5% in total, concurrent with the transatlantic voyage. Slave trader also transferred nearly 500,000 enslaved people throughout America, with the most documented intra-American voyages originating in the Caribbean. So there were indigenous people in the Caribbean, African descendants, that they started enslaving them and bringing them over to the mainland. So not only was it taking them from the north, like in a 12-year slave, but the Caribbean, you had learned men, you had men who set up political systems, these houses that came with the Mali Empire, all throughout the Caribbean and Brazil, Central America, being enslaved and taken into North America. This was just what was going on. Tying the vine so that they can steal your heredity, your gifts. Remember, we practice a true Christianity, a true Judaism, and a true Islamic way. The truth of it all aligns with each other and it comes from ancient Kemet. They took that and revised it and gave us a false narrative. For instance, for you to be initiated into and be baptized or be initiated into this culture, right? Into a society, right? You had to know. The rite of passage was of you knowing information, not believing, but knowing. Remember, you can believe in your cart that it can take you to the destination, but not know there's a wheel loose, right? So in in knowing certain things were your way in to these sacred halls of knowledge. So there was a riddle. Why walks on 4, then on 2, and then on 3? You had to answer that. It's knowing the answers to these things who gave you rite of passage. But they switched all that. They killed all that initiatory rituals and replaced it with belief. Blind faith and belief. Now you don't need to know. All you have to do is believe to be a Christian. Before, the original Christianity, true Christianity, you had to know certain information. They replaced that with just belief. Now all you have to do is have blind faith and belief. You don't need to know anything. You know what I'm saying? That's how that's the switcheroo. That's the switch and bait. That's how they switch things around on us. But we practice true Christianity. Messiah. We practice that from ancient Kemet with Asar being risen, right? We practiced that. That was one of our way of life. And it went into the Nile River Valley. And it went to Ethiopia. It went into Samaria. It went into the Iberian Peninsula. All over where we were going, we took those concepts with us. And that's when they take it and they reverse it, you know what I'm saying? And they put their trust and their belief into it. They switched it around, so it became their Judaism, it became their Mohammedism, and it became their Christianity. You know, and it replaced the true. So we're here to set the record straight. We're here to set the record straight. Okay? Those were just rituals that our ancestors practiced because we were more aligned, connected with the stars. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, not to get too much out of the subject. So if you read on here, okay, so concurrent with the transatlantic voyages, slave trader also transferred nearly 500,000 enslaved, now listen to the verbiage, not slave, enslaved people throughout America, with most documented intra-American voyage originating in the Caribbean. Despite the majority of enslaved African disembarking to Latin America, estimates of the proportion of African ancestry in Latin America with African roots are lower on the average than estimated of African Americans in the United States. We're going to look at that graph later on because you see there are pockets of areas that were more concentrated on those that they brought in chains and slaves in the 15th. But prior to that, you look at a huge area of indigenous Africans living in these parts of the world. Further patterns of embarkations of enslaved population varied over time, whereby people, you see, you have to read for comprehension. You have to look at the words they use. They carefully to use the words. Slave is different than being enslaved. You know what I'm saying? You just have to stand to reason that. Now, prior to 1650, slave voyages most often originated in Seneca, Gambia, and West Central Africa, a location now known as the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Angola. Although West Central Africa remains a primary embarkation region throughout the slave trading periods, from 1650 to 1850. These voyages originated with increasing frequency at ports in the Bight of Benin and the Bight of Biafra, which is a location now known as Benin, Nigeria, Cameroon, and Gabon. While records have shed light on the main trends of the transatlantic slave trade, the effects of under-documenting practice. Now, listen again. While records have shed light on the main trends of the transatlantic slave trade, the effects of under-documented practices, such as illegal slave trading and details of events after the disembarkation in America, remain less understood. Again, tying into the divine and also enslaving free Africans that were already on this continent. If documented events did not shift the overall paradigm of the slave trade and the reproduction rate was equivalent among enslaved population in the Americas, the degree of genetic similarity between Americas and each slave trading region of Africa would be expected to be correlated, right, with the recorded number of enslaved people that disembark into each region. Also known about the extent which enslaved people and their descendants continue. Oh, sorry. What's going on here, y'all? Okay. I'm trying to find this. Well, you really have to get into this article. Man, I don't know what's going on with my computer. It's acting all funny on me. Voyage record. Now, this is how they did the studies. And it's just very interesting how they do these studies, and you have to be very careful. I mean, I did do my ancestry DNA only for the simple reason that I wanted to find family members. So, and I did find it, And the only way you can do that is one of those family members also submitted their DNA for testing. You know what I'm saying? And then the connections were made. So the connections were made for me, and I reconnected with family members that I haven't seen in for almost 40-something years. But you have to be very careful with the information that's out there. You know what I'm saying? This is from 23andMe. And these are the studies. But this is studies. I'm very careful and very standoff when somebody mentioned peer review. Because anything with peer pressure, peer review, is a specific group of people that their objective is what? To further their own studies and to make sure that it's in line with what studies they need to propagate. You know what I'm saying? They're not going out of the box. They do not go out of the box. They stay in peer review. So this is a peer review. These are these anthropologists. They all have the same agenda and initiative. Again, this is part of tying into the vine. You know what I'm saying? Now, the voyage records. We access transatlantic historical records from the slave voyage database. They have a database. The slave voyage database contains a collection of records from a wide range of published and archival information for more than 36,000 voyages across the Atlantic between 1492 and the early 19th century. Only 36,000 voyages. Now, the database contains more than 100 possible variations for each voyage, including voyage dates, disembarkation and embarkation ports, crew information, and voyage outcome. Some records that lack pertinent data were inputted using information such as carrying capacity of vessels, characteristics of similar documentation voyages. Using the slave voyages database, we compile estimates of enslaved African embarkation, imputed number of slave purchased exact. Disembarkation inputted total slave disembarked exact. Proportion of males, proportion of children for each Atlantic African. Okay? So on and on and on. They use a 23andMe ancestry composition pipeline to identify the ancestral origin of the chromosomal segments in individuals using all available genotype data. Thus, the number used to predict ancestry varies between 560,000 and 950,000 based on the platform the individual was genotyped on. And ancestry composition uses support vector machine classified to assign ancestral label. This is all jargon. We find that the overall, let me see, sorry about that. This thing is going cuckoo on me. We find that the overall genetic evidence of Atlantic African ancestry across America is consistent. That's just what they find, that it's consistent with the Bites of Benin and Biafra, as well as Nigerian ancestry, is overrepresented in the United States and Latin America, considering the recorded number of enslaved people that embarked from ports along the coast of present-day Nigeria into these regions of the America. So they're weighing it out. They're saying, okay, this is the records that we have, historical records, and then what has been in account for and that has been ledgered in with the genetic sequences. They find a good correlation, you know what I'm saying? But here, I'm going to keep reading on because there's something very interesting. Okay, so as a result, indicate that African ancestry and the MSIBD do not vary much within broad regions of America, despite enslaved people disembarking at different rates in different ports. This observation is expected, given that slavery transported enslaved people regionally and extensive local migration followed the transatlantic slave trade. For instance, the domestic slave trade in the United States between 1790 and 1860 would see the transportation of 1 million enslaved people across the southeastern United States. Enslaved. Some came as slaves, some were set free, and some was re-slaved again with another population. They were enslaved, and I'm going to bring those later on. So similarly, the tale of trios will force Native Americans and the enslaved people that they claim that they own westward of Oklahoma. Okay? Also, the Great Migration that occurred between 1916 and 1970 to escape segregation and poor economic condition will bring former slaves and their descendants to all parts of the Northeast and the Midwest United States. So there was another migration that happened, you know, when segregation, you know, to escape segregation. You know, similar movement occurs elsewhere, such as migration from northeastern Brazil, Bahia and Pernambuco, to southern and central Brazil, Rio de Janeiro and Minas, Goiás. These large migrations could easily obscure pre-existing local population structure and African descendant community as a result of admixture. Again, tying into the vine, because the majority of individuals in this study have connections to multiple populations in Atlantic Africa. In my genetic, it shows Mali, but it also shows Congo, Benin, and Senegal. Congo, Benin, and Senegal, a small percentage, but the majority of my percentage is from Mali. I should have put those records up. I got it on my phone. I just got to transfer it over to my laptop so I can share that with you. However, despite of its intensive genetic evidence of external and local migration, we found no evidence for long-distance migration between broad regions in America after the disembarkation, except between the United States and the British Caribbean. That was the point of distribution, was at the British Caribbean. And when you talk about British Caribbean, you're talking about Jamaica, the Virgin Islands. British Caribbean was the spot. And then the French Caribbean came in Haiti and Santo Domingo. You know what I'm saying? But the British, you know, that was the ports. Those were a mixture of already Africans that was there, Moros, Cimarrones, with these enslaved that tied to the vine, and a lot of them were enslaved and taken with the slaves into North America. Those are the ones that you see in the plantation, the roots that they used to whip and whip them as to be an example to the other slaves. Because it's like, whoa, that brother's very intelligent. That brother's teaching us how to write. That brother's teaching us how to read. That brother is teaching the master's kids how to read, and their sisters. But when they did something that the master didn't like and wanted to take out something, what did? They took him as an example and whipped the hell out of him, and while the other slave was like, well, I don't want to be that smart. Not me, sir. No, master, I don't want to be that smart. Get my ass whipped. I'm going to stay a good Christian. I'm going to go to church and sit in the back because they weren't allowed in the front. While the master was also the pastor. He carried all those functions. This is what he propagated to make sure he kept that spell going within the slaves. Together with the whipping and together with the narratives and the reading of the different scriptures that was translated into Old English, and the reading of that solidified and continue his rule over until you get somebody like Nat Turner, who took those scriptures and reversed it back. He reverse engineered it back. It was a reverse at first, and then he reversed the reverse. You know what I'm saying? And took it back and used it to wake up the other slaves. And when they heard the call, they heard that voice, and they heard the call a lot. And you know what happened after that. You get the story. So anyway, conclusion: we presented broad-scale investigation into the transatlantic slave trade, advancing the understanding of its consequences by comparing genetic connections with historical records. While the current genetic landscape of African ancestry in America largely agrees with transatlantic voyage records, additional historical accounts shed light on discordance. For example, over-representation of Nigerian ancestry in parts of the Americas is explained by the intra-American trade of enslaved people from the British Caribbean. And the underrepresentation of the Seneca Gambia ancestry across the America is supported by accounts of early trading and high morality from this region. Patterns of variation across America, such as lower African ancestry and a higher African female sex bias, can be attributed to socioeconomic factors, non-African male admixture, and inhumane treatment of enslaved people. While transatlantic records have told us a large part of the story, insight from this study is combination with other historical accounts sheds light on detail of the genetic impact of the transatlantic slave trade on present-day population in America. Again, they're trying to hide a lot of things. You just have to put the pieces together. So this is the article. If anybody would like this article, well, you can please cite this article in the press, the American Journal of the Human Genetics 2020. And it has on top over here, you see the site. Here on top, right? You see it, okay? I'll just give you a moment if you want to take that down and read this article for yourself. So they're finding a large pool of genetics in Brazil, in the Caribbean, Central America, and then they find it in certain pockets in North America. You know what I'm saying? Well, they're finding pockets of slave from a certain area, right? Because they look at the deportation of the slaves and what ports they will come out of, and then they look at the genetics. But remember that the genetics were from all parts of Africa. There's shows from the Congo and from Angola, and traveled, you know what I'm saying, people, and took them as slaves, and put them in shackles. And what did they do? They humbled them because they were reading the scriptures to them and saying, you got to be humble yourself. We are your master. Obey your masters. This is the book that's gonna save you. And it's like, they just kept. Come on. Mm-hmm. They kept indoctrinating them. You know what I'm saying? And then the ones that that had the genetics of those learned men, those political scientists, those builders, those astronomical scientists, astronomy, astrophysicists. You know what I'm saying? They took those and they used them as an example. They beat the hell out of them. Because they were speaking about them. Remember, they were enslaved. Enslaved and mixed in with the population that they brought, that they already had debased them, constantly debased them. You know? And so that's how you get a lot of the versions of the Christianity today. You know, as opposed to the true Christianity. When you study about the Sabaean and the Mandeism, Book of Adam, and on the Suhuf, and you study Quran, you study the Torah, the Injil, and you see that there's a difference. When you start putting those pieces together, you see there's a difference than what a normal pastor, a 501c pastor will give you in a Sunday, you know, get together. You know what I'm saying? Because the admixture mixed in, you know what I'm saying? But now it's time to lift ourselves up, man. Now it's time for us to lift ourselves, put those pieces together so we get to know the truth. And so we look at articles like what I show you, we're able to break it apart and break it up and say, wait a minute, that doesn't, it adds on with this narrative, but it doesn't add on to this other narrative. How can I add it up in, how can I put it together? It's like a puzzle. How can I put that together? Well, if you got people, slaves, coming from over the Atlantic, the transatlantic slaves, and you got these people slave, but you already have a population of Africans that are here, present. Christopher Columbus spoke about them. And then on and on and on, you see that these men were free, and they were the one who set up political, social structures in the Caribbean, in Brazil, and also in the Americas. You know, most of the early presidents, the Continental, out of the Oracles Confederation came the Continental Congress, and you see there were a lot of black men. Benjamin Banneker, James Hansen, forgot, a lot of other names. They were prominent men, you know, and setting up universities like Booker T. Washington, you know what I'm saying, setting up universities and stuff like that. So you had this bloodline. You had these men that had to use Christianity, had to use the Bible, but they had a genetic information that were able to see something else in there and extract what they needed to extract that made, and so they could speak their truth. You know what I'm saying? So when you put the pieces together, you say, you know, so here I got my brothers and sisters coming on these slave ships, and I'm being enslaved with them because they're pulling us together. You know what I'm saying? They're kidnapping a lot of us. A lot of dignitaries were kidnapped. Like I said, the movie 12 Years Slave, that was a brother of a hierarchy, a violinist who was kidnapped. So you can imagine how many more was kidnapped. He wasn't the only one. So they switched it around. So they kidnapped those hierarchy, again, those political scientists, those astrophysicists, those ones who were speaking about true Christianity, you know what I'm saying, who was knowing about it, they were used as an example. They were kidnapped and used as an example as to keep the melanated race in place. It was a horrific, atrocious time, you know what I'm saying, for our people. But we came out of that. We came out of the muck and mire. We was lifted up by the claw. That's Masonic talk. And we was lifted up and shown, you know, the heavens. You know what I'm saying? We were shown. We're able now to take the scriptures and really dig in. You got the Bible concordance. We're really now able to dig in to know like it was in the beginning. True Christianity, you had to know certain knowledge before you became baptized. And in running water, you know, they called it baptize you in the river of Jordan. There's baptizing with running water in a river. This was part of our rituals of true Christianity. But you had to know the initiatory rituals, and you had to know. They replaced that with just simply believing. You know what I'm saying? This is what the narrative that they were pushing to our brothers and sisters who were slaves, who was brought over in chain, mixed in with the ones that were here and that they enslaved. And so you get a lot of doctrine, a lot of mixed emotions out here. A lot of mixed emotions. And my heart goes out to my brothers and sisters, man. You know what I'm saying? And that is that, you know, in knowing something, to know is far much greater than to just believe. To know is far much greater. You should know the truth, and the truth will set you free. I don't say you should believe in the truth. These are different keys that we have in the scriptures that we're able to break down and bring it. You know? While walks on 4, then on 2, and then on 3. I'll put that out there again. If you can answer it, answer. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I got to comment. What are you all about? Yeah. Brooklyn Outlaw. What am I all about? I'm doing these classes where right now I'm looking at the African, our story, you know what I'm saying, which is also in the Caribbean. And when you deal with the Borinquen, the Borinquen were a mixture of different tribes. The island of Borinquen was more, a lot of the women were there. It was called Gainas and Borinquen. And they were a mixture of Mongolians, a mixture of Nubans, and also a lot of them was mixed in by the African that came with the Mali Empire, the different tribes, like the Bambara tribes, also mixed in. You know, so we became an admixture, all right, more than in the North America. You know what I'm saying? Even though there was mixture being done in North America, you know, with the Yamasee, the Shoshone, and on and on and on. There was also a mixture. But what I'm talking about is the slavery in general and how tying into the vine. That's part of our story. Even in the Caribbean, there were slaves that were shackled, that were brought into the Caribbean. And even some Boricuas and some Native Americans was shackled also and brought to the Iberian Peninsula and to Europe. But it happened like that also. You know what I'm saying? But we're talking about the African diaspora, and we're talking about the slaves or the shackled kidnapped they were kidnapped, the majority of them, of those that were kidnapped from the Africa in that time, from the 1560 over to the 1886. Within that time, a lot of them went into Brazil. 90% into Brazil, into South America, Central America, and the Caribbean. There were pockets that were brought into North America, but there was already Africans in North America that traveled up. They traveled up into North America, and they became amalgamated or mixed in with the natives, the one that were Mongolian types. They mixed in. That's the reason why you have some native that wear turbans and some that wear feathers. They mixed in, and their culture mixed in. And then you brought slaves. When they brought the slaves, the kidnapped, not slaves, because that's a Slavic word. When they brought those kidnapped Africans in chains, they tie into the vine. Then they started enslaving the other admixture of Africans that were here already. They started to enslave it. That was part of the whole program. That was their agenda of how they're going to slave. You know what I'm saying? You know? So Brooklyn Outlaw, what am I about? I'm about truth, brother. I'm about putting the pieces together, my brother. Brooklyn in the house, yeah, Bushwick, right here, Hart Street. What's going on? You know what I'm saying? Born and raised in the Bronx, though. So, you know, what's good? What's Gucci? What's good? What's popping? However you want to look at it. Brooklyn Outlaw. So, again, that report that I gave you is from 23andMe, and it's genetic data. They matching it up with the most important thing I got out of that is that they do have archives of historical data that tells about the slaves. But when you add it up and you correlate, there's missing pieces. Missing pieces because they're not letting you know. They're not letting you know. Only in certain circles, they're letting you know that there was already Africans here way before. That the reason they brought a lot of these slaves, these kidnappees, our brothers and sisters who were kidnapped out there, and the reason why they brought them over was to tie into the vine so that they can, again, mass enslave us. They can mass enslave us. After we taught them political science through the art of masonry, because that's what Freemasonry is. Our form of masonry is learning how to govern yourself. You know, you have the worshipful master, you got the treasurer, you have the secretary. You have an order of things. That's how political systems are set. When you walk into a court, that's the setting. You know what I'm saying? So we taught that to these Europeans that came here. We taught that to the British. We taught them that. And we taught it to the Native Americans. You know? And then astrophysics, okay, of connecting with the stars and true Christianity, true Judaism, and true Mohammedanism, true Islam. You know what I'm saying? Which is all the same. It's what we practice, you know, from ancient Kemet. And you see it in the walls. You see the judges and the Tharos. And then you see Assad being risen. And you see Tahuti writing. And you see the crocodile, because that's the crocodile to Masaha. Masaha, to wipe away Messiah, to make you a Messiah. Means one who's wiped away. Wipe away your sins. It has the ability to wipe away the sins. Assad was one of the first ones who wore the white crown, the Hajat. And when you read in Revelation, and they said they seen this man with a white crown and a white hair. They made a difference between his white head and his white hair. White head and white hair in Revelation. The head is the crown. He wore a white crown. This is our culture. This is our teachings, our culture. Okay? That's the true white power. You know what I'm saying? Not this other stuff they're talking about. You know? So we knew how to walk between the white and the black. That's the checkerboard, the chessboard. Remember, in masonry, the floor is white and black, knowing how to navigate yourself between the white and black. Which is important, which is, again, the star energy with the earth energy. And being totally balanced. Wow. Stop it. I need water. Anyway, I just wanted to scratch the surface on that and give you that as to put the pieces together. So you can go out there and look up a lot of this works and see and just look deep into it. You know, there's a lot more coming. So that's all I'm going to do right here, right now. And I am going to end this. I do have a meeting in a few. It's 6:26. Well, listen, peace and blessings to you all. And I was just scratching the surface. I want to go much, much deeper. But this is just one of the the papers that came out, and you see how they're doing the sequencing, and you see it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up at all. And they even told you that there's a little bit of discordance here. So how do we put the pieces together? That missed information has to be filled. That void has to be filled with the proper information. That's how Master Teacher Panda Yanun came to do. He put in the pieces into the missing pieces. He put it in. He was able to do that because he also had to study, read, look at things, and being a puzzle player. You know what I'm saying? Learning how to put these pieces together. You know. So one of the pieces that we had put here together is the fact that you had in the Caribbean, we're calling it Africa diaspora. Okay? In the African diaspora, you know, you had a lot. First of all, you had genetics, African genetics, Berber genetics coming from the Iberian Peninsula, right? And I'm speaking with my Caribbeans and Brazilian and Caribbean and Central America, okay? So people from Iberian Peninsula, those Berbers out there, and mixed in, the Berbers were a mixture of Romans and Carthaginians mixing in, right? And those Berbers are indigenous people of Africa, North Africa, indigenous people, okay? They went into the Iberian Peninsula. Them, along with other tribes from the Fulani and the Hausa, they all went, you know, come by way of Sudan and into the Sahara. There's a sub-Saharan, they came into the Sahara, and they traveled in with the Berbers, and they went into what they call Iberian Peninsula, and also they went into Europe. We discussed that already. And we discussed that the Mali Empire of already an African bloodline, lineage that came here by way of Mali, the Mali Empire, and the connection between the West and the East. All the goods that were shipped over, and Mali became even stronger because there was a lot of stuff that being shipped from these parts to over there, and vice versa. You know what I'm saying? So we saw that. You know, we're seeing artifacts. Now we're speaking about the kidnappings. Our brothers and sisters that they kidnapped, those prisoners of war and those prisoners that they kidnapped, that sold to them, to the Portuguese. And not only sold, the Portuguese went in there and grabbed as many as people as they can. But remember, a lot of the men, 60, 70, 80% of them were men. Because women and children could not make that voyage, and they knew it. If they tried to bring women and children in there, they really didn't survive. That's what you have in the Atlantic Ocean. They show the women holding the child, what they call statues and stuff that they made, you know what I'm saying, as a as to bring the awareness to that. A lot of women and children did not make it, and it was thrown overboard. The majority of the men made it. So they contribute the Y chromosomes, and it adds up. From areas, Seneca Gambia is one. A lot of more from there. Not like they thought Nigeria, because in Nigeria, what they took those kidnapped people from Nigeria, they went into British Caribbean. And then from the British Caribbean, they spoke very good English, and they were transported. Almost 500,000 was transported into the mainland to serve as interpreters and teachers. And they spoke very good English, very well English, better than their slave master. You know what I'm saying? And so when you have this mixture, okay, this mixture, and that's for the African American, this mixture, and then in the Caribbean and in Brazil, this mixture of genetics, and this is what they're finding out, is that there's an admixture, there's a mixture of genetics. You know what I'm saying? And then how can, if most of your and then you see the jargon they use and the verbiage, enslaved. That means they enslave you again. They brought you in, kidnap you, they brought you over, and then the population that was here that was still African diaspora were enslaved and put into the system. That was happening all over. all over. You know what I'm saying? So the jig is up. Anyway, peace and blessing. I'm going to leave it at that. You know what I'm saying? And I'll just scratch the surface there. It's getting dark here. I got to put on my light. But peace and blessings to y'all. And, we're going to continue on. Again, I put up that article. You know what I'm saying? And read it. If you can get that article, just go back. If you can get that article, write it down. Google it. Write that article and read it, and it'll give you an idea of some studies that they're doing. But then you have to, be careful, because you have to put the pieces together. You have to put the pieces together. You know what I'm saying? Because remember, those peer-reviewed articles, and that's a peer. They have an agenda and they have an initiative, those peers. So you have to be very careful with that. So anyway, peace and blessing. Love you all. I wish I could have paid. I'm gonna probably do an edit of it, get it to a point where I could play you some nice percussion music. I'm ready to record also tonight some percussion music. You know what I'm saying? And hopefully I could present it. Peace and blessing, y'all. I'm out.